Hey folks, welcome to my world. It's Dominique back here with you. I figure you might have guessed that by the fact that you're listening to my show. Imagine that. So if you're hearing background noise, I'm sitting with my patio door open. As some of you know, I live in a mid-rise, large building, and I am just sitting, kind of letting the air come in. So if it gets super loud, I will close the door. Let me know in feedback what you think. Is it super loud? Is it bugging you? Because the birds are going nuts today. They've been crazy all day. Apparently that happens after a storm. And, if the noise is getting to you, please let me know, okay? Feedback. It's really helpful. Now, what we're going to talk about today with that kind of like goofy introduction, it's actually going to be something rather more on the serious side. And I want to be careful how I frame this. Because I don't want to use other people's pain, certainly, for my benefit on my show. That is not how I do things around here. But I want to talk a little bit because of my personal experience as a spoonie, i.e. somebody with for the most part, invisible illnesses, who lives pretty much every day in a certain amount of pain. No, don't feel sorry for me. I'm fine. Seriously, don't. But as somebody with that life experience, the world looks a little different to me. And in a good way, actually, in a good way, because pain is a teacher, and it really does teach you patience and empathy. And I kind of feel like it teaches you strength in a way, too, which might seem like a misnomer or, like it's not possible, but it does. It does, really. Being in pain, having been through loss, a lot of loss, teaches you how to empathize with other people and how to be there for yourself and others. And I think that's an important lesson. And I want to pass on a little bit of what I am learning. It's not like I'm at my all-time peak and I know everything, but what I am learning as I go along through life. And that basically has to do, at least in terms of today's episode, with how to help people who are in pain, who are suffering, who are hurting, who are sick, who, maybe have gone through a major loss. I think there's a really important way to be there for those people. And there's also a really, really important way not to be there for those people. And I think that's where people tend to get a little bit stuck. Like, how do I help them? But it comes through in a way that sounds to the person who's hurting more like, how can I help myself feel better about being a friend to this person? Like, how can I make myself feel like I at least made an effort so I can just move on and move past this sorrowful subject, which is, that's not an okay way to be. I'm sorry, folks. We're just going to be real about it. So, without further ado, let's just talk about how to actually get into being there for somebody you love or are friends with or, are work acquaintances with, whatever. It doesn't matter. Family, friend, acquaintance, it really doesn't matter. We should all be there for each other. Let's talk about ways we can do that in non-selfish, non-annoying ways. Let's put it that way. I think people tend to almost, because we all have our own life experiences and our own sort of set of glasses, right, that we see the world through. I think we tend to look at that person and say, well, here's what I would want if I were in their shoes, which is good because that is actually empathetic, but it's not you. You're not going through that. It's the person you care about, not you, that's going through this tough time. And it's really important to keep that in mind when we're looking at trying to be there for that person. So whether this person is ill, whether this person is terminally ill, whether this person has a loved one who just developed a terminal illness, whether this person has just lost somebody they love. It's very important to make sure that you, while you're being empathetic, because that is still important, that you sort of take yourself out of the equation. And how do we do that? Well, then let's first talk about how not to approach this person, right? So again, no matter what it is this person is dealing with, whether they've been diagnosed with an illness, whether a loved one or friend has been diagnosed with an illness, whether a close person has died, they're grieving. And that's really the bottom line. They're grieving and they're trying to find their new normal. And they are looking at issues of mortality, really, no matter how you cut it. So the best thing to avoid is really, guys, number one, best thing to avoid is telling that person that you know how they feel. You might have been through the exact same situation that they have. You might have greater insight, truly, into how they feel, right? You really might. You might have a really keen insight into how they feel that other people don't have, and that's valid, and that's true. That's absolutely true. But you don't know how they feel because you haven't had the life experiences they've had. And if this involves, a loved one, for instance, a loved one is ill, a loved one has passed away, a loved one is dying, you really don't know how they feel because you haven't had the relationship that they have had with that person. Every relationship is different. Every person is different. Everyone's life experience is slightly different. Really important to keep in mind when we're dealing with grief and loss in friends and loved ones. Really important to keep in mind. And, I'm no expert. I'm not Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, right? I'm just me. I'm just Dominique, and I happen to be speaking from a point of having lost a lot in terms of loved ones, in terms of really upsetting deaths, in terms of, really horrible diagnoses with myself and with loved ones and close people. And again, my experiences are going to differ from other people's, but I still know what not to say and what not to do. Because not only do I know what kind of irritated me when I was going through my own hard times with loss and upsetting diagnoses and that sort of thing, but I've talked to other people about this subject and gotten conversations going, and I think that we've come to some really important agreements on what things should not be done or offered or said to the grieving person in your life, right? Whether they're grieving an illness, a death, an impending death, whether it's them or somebody else, right? It's kind of universal what not to do. And when we're approaching this person that we love, like I mentioned, really important not to say or indicate really in any way that we know how they feel. We don't. And that is actually one of the top things, apparently, according to Psychology Today. Really one of the top things that people say to a grieving friend or loved one is, I know how you feel. And I know that the sentiment behind that is, hey, I'm with you on this journey. I've been there myself, but you're not with them on that journey. And you haven't been there yourself. No matter how much loss you've been through, you have not been there. And you're not with them on that journey. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. And the sooner that you realize this, the better for your loved one or friend. You're not with them on that journey. You're just not. And it's just very important that you don't try to act like you are. I know it's coming from a good place. I know it's coming from a place of love and kindness, and that's important. But there are other ways that we can express that, aren't there? So firstly, I know what you're going through is really the wrong thing to say. I know how you're feeling. Don't go there. There are other ways to express this, truly. And other ways that will allow you to deepen your connection with this person. Not only are there other ways to express it, there are better ways to express it. There are ways that you can deepen your connection with this person you love and care for so much. Now, as far as what you should say, I think we'll get to that in a little bit. Another thing that you don't want to do, and this one's a little, it might seem a little off the wall, is what I'm trying to say. It's not, but it might seem so. Be mindful of touching. There are people who like to be touched in their grief and hugged. Look for those signs with that person. Are they open to being touched? Are they open to being hugged? Are they open to having their hand held? If they are exhibiting closed body language, or if they have expressed to you that they're in physical pain, I know that when I'm in physical pain, look, I'm sorry guys, I love you, but I don't want to be touched. I don't want to be hugged. I don't want to have my hand held. I don't want to have nobody's hand on my leg, okay? It's just that simple. So depending on what they're going through and what signs they're telegraphing to you, try to use your own judgment as far as whether or not you feel you can approach them in that way. Asking is always a good thing, of course. Asking is always a good thing. But just making sure that we're not assuming that other people like to be comforted the way we might like to be comforted, or, even that other people are in a space where they want to be comforted at all is a good thing. Making sure we're not assuming, we're not making assumptions about this. Because it can be really tricky. Going through grief, going through illness, it can be a tricky time. And making sure that we don't make assumptions is really important. We need to know where that person is coming from. We don't want to assume. If you ever have questions, ask the person you love. Ask the person you care for. What would you be comfortable with? And that leads me into another thing that I think we should all avoid doing for people who are grieving, whether it be, like I said, an illness, a death, an impending death within their family. Maybe they're ill, maybe they're getting ready to pass on. And it's really very important that we extend thorough and specific invitations of help. It's really, really important. Saying, I'm here if you need anything is pretty much the catch-all. I definitely have heard that when I've gone through my moments, days, months, years of loss and grief and sorrow. I'm here if you need anything. It's like, well, sure, friend of dad's that I've never met before. Well, sure, friend of a friend who I've never met before. Let me just call you when I need groceries, because that's normal, right? Sure, let me call this person I've literally never met in my life and ask them to come give me a back massage. That's totally what I'm going to do. And of course, even if I would do that when I was feeling well and when I hadn't been grieving, I certainly am not going to do that when I am grieving or when I'm not feeling well, right? Not likely. So really I'm here if you need me. If you need to talk, I'm here. That's not really constructive. Like, it comes from a good place. I'm not trying to denigrate or bash or diss anybody for trying to be there for their loved one. I'm just trying to help you be more constructive about it and do it in a way that really is substantive and that will make you and the person you love feel better, right? Win-win. And so don't feel bad if any of these things have occurred to you. Please don't feel bad about it. You're coming from a good place. You're obviously listening to this podcast because you want to be there for somebody you love, right? And that's good. That matters. Please don't feel like I'm bashing you for that. I'm not. You're amazing. Thank you for that. I mean, even if you don't get thanked by anyone else, I'm saying thank you for that. Thank you. You're awesome. You're a wonderful person. You're empathetic, you're kind, and you're lovely, frankly. So thank you for doing this and for being there for somebody you love. That's really amazing. That's an incredible, incredible way to be. And there should be more people like you in the world. Okay? Truly. Now, as far as offers to lend an ear, same thing goes. A generic offer of, I'm here if you need anything, I'm here if you need to talk, right, is not super helpful. Not because we don't believe that you want to listen to us. Oh my gosh, not the case. It's just that when we're in a state of lowliness and loneliness and grief and pain, and we're just, at the very, very bottom, rock bottom of life, we're not likely to reach out. It's unlikely that we're even going to reach out to the closest people in our lives, let alone somebody who comes along as sort of a good Samaritan who we really don't know and trust. So it's important to show that you're empathetic and kind, not just by hovering and not just by, constantly beating us over the head with offers of help, but it's important to show that you're there for us by giving us space and finding a balance between being hovering and meddlesome and meddling and, bothersome and giving space, right? There's kind of a happy medium, especially when it's somebody that's really close to us who's grieving or ill. It's really, really important to find a happy medium. Find a good time of day, maybe a couple days a week that you're going to try to reach out just with short, brief, to the point, kind, empathetic texts. We don't always like getting phone calls. We might be in the middle of crying. We might be in the middle of being ill. If we're physically ill, we might be in a place where we don't want to talk. I know this for a fact because this is an issue I deal with on a daily basis. I don't always have the energy to have a phone call, even when I'm having good days. And that's partially because of what I do for a living. But I also know the other side of it, which is being ill, being a spoonie, having a chronic illness, and feeling like I just cannot always be available to chat, right? So it's always best, I think, to reach out with a text first. It's always best to reach out with a text. If you can plan a time for a phone call, great. Do it through text first. Say, can I call you at this time? And then be willing to rearrange that and reschedule that if at that time or closer to that time the person just doesn't feel up to chatting, right? So be specific. Hey, I'm texting you to see if you're okay. Well, it sounds like you might need to talk. If that's the case, can I call you at this time? And then when you do call, you need to be prepared to do more listening than talking. I have friends who I love very much who, have called me when I've had tough times, and then we end up talking about all their stuff, and I feel like I just gave them a free therapy session, and it's draining on me, and then that makes me not want to pick up future calls. Again, I'm not saying poor me. I'm just saying that's how I feel. That is my experience, and I know that is a valid and likely experience that other people who might be suffering or grieving might be having. I know that's a likelihood that they might feel pressed to talk about your issues, and then once they have, they feel even more drained. So don't be calling them up, talking about your issues and your problems. Don't be calling them up and trying to I've even had loved ones say, well, I'm trying to take your mind off of it. It's like, yeah, thanks for taking my mind off of my problems and putting them on yours. That's really helpful. And I know that people mean well, but it can be draining. It can be draining to have to go, yeah, that sucks. I hear ya. Oh, I feel ya. Yep. on top of the fact that you're already grieving or hurting or in pain. So something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind. Another really good way to be and a good offer to make is a specific offer of help. Be that compassionate friend who comes through, again, not beating the person over the head with it and not just leaving them be forever and ever and ignoring them after you've made one offer, because that's not going to work either. Finding that happy medium and coming through, and maybe once a week during your time of grief or sorrow, which could be prolonged and it could be not so prolonged. There is no set grieving period for people. So please acknowledge that, whether it's an illness, whether it's a death, whether it's an impending death. There's no set grieving time, and we need to drop our expectations with regard to that. I've definitely had friends and family and clients say, well, gosh, Susan's husband died a year ago. She should be over it by now. It's like, ooh, that doesn't sound very good. That doesn't feel very good to hear, even to me. Woo, why? Why is that the case? Maybe she was with him for 30 years. Why should she be over him in a year? That doesn't make sense. Is it for your comfort? So don't expect people to grieve on your timetable or, get through their sorrow over an illness or a loss on your timetable. That's not empathetic, and I know it's uncomfortable to have to think about someone else's grief, but you've got to. This is life. You've got to be able to be that empathetic. You don't have to delve into their very soul and try to feel it with them. You just need to understand that they're feeling something that they can't express, and probably 9 times out of 10 won't want to express, won't have any desire to express. You need to understand that, and you need to be understanding and kind at this very tough time, at this point in time. It's really, really important. And so again, no timetable, guys. Drop the timetable expectations. That's not a thing. That's our own insecurities, talking to us when we have expectations like that. That's our own discomfort talking to us, and discomfort's always there to what? Send us a message. That's right. Discomfort exists to send us a message that something's going on and that something is kind of probably a little bit important, right? So listen to your discomfort rather than shooing it away and saying, well, gosh, Susan, get over your husband's death. I know you were together for 30 years, but God, it's been a year. Get over it. Susan, don't do that. Don't do that. I know it's uncomfortable to have to consider someone else's grief, but guess what? You've got to. If you're a loving person and this is someone you want in your life, you've got to. And you certainly, here's another don't before we move on to a couple of do's. Don't cut somebody out when they're grieving. Maybe you want to break up with them. Maybe you have other reasons for not wanting them in your life and vice versa. Don't cut them out when they're grieving. That's not cool. That's akin to dumping somebody on Valentine's Day or their birthday or Christmas or during the Hanukkah period. I don't know. It's not an acceptable way to be. Don't be that person, please. You don't have to keep somebody in your life forever and ever that you're just not fond of, but please don't dump them when they're grieving. That's not helpful to you or anybody else. And guess what? You're going to feel bad about it too. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Look, they're not going to, if they do expect everything from you, then you're not in a healthy relationship. But be there for them in the ways that you can be. And then if you still feel later that maybe you're not meant to be in each other's lives and that it's not working out, you can discuss that at a later time. I would say for this one, there probably is a timetable. So give it a year. I know, but really, give it a year. And again, you don't need to be that person's everything. You don't need to be there to wipe their tears every time they cry. You just need to be able to continue to offer support in whatever ways you can, right, at that time. So again, something to keep in mind that maybe you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Now, moving on to the do's. Do give specific offers of help. Like I said, you don't want to just call randomly. You want to schedule the call through text. I know. Some of us like chatting on the phone. I used to until I started doing what I do for a living. Now, after talking to people literally all day, and which I love doing, and, counseling them and listening to their issues, which, again, I love doing. I just don't feel like doing that after work. Like I've said before, it's like asking a hairdresser or massage therapist to, hey, come rub my feet at the end of the day, or can you just give me a quick trim? It's like, no, they're sick of it. Please, don't ask them, right? So make sure that you do schedule phone calls. Some people will like getting an impromptu call. Some people won't. That may change one way or the other when they're grieving. So be mindful of this. You don't have to walk on eggshells. Just use some of these basic outlines, these basic rules that I'm giving you. That way you don't feel that you have to walk on eggshells. You can just be there for them. You can just concentrate on being there for them. Right? So what I would suggest, if you do end up calling this person, if you've agreed to that and you feel comfortable chatting on the phone and they feel comfortable chatting on the phone, then I would suggest that while you're talking with them or meeting up with them or what have you, that you make an offer to them that's very concrete and very specific. For instance, and here are the things that I know I like help with when I'm in a bad flare-up or when I'm grieving somebody's death or grieving a loss. Here are some of the things that I appreciate. Concrete bits of help. It's always nice to talk to people. It's nicer to get concrete bits of help when you're really struggling in life and you're struggling to keep your head above water. So I like when somebody offers to cook me a meal. Better yet, cook me a casserole. I'll eat it for the week, right? Seriously, it's extremely helpful. I remember I had a friend who cooked me a vegetarian lasagna. And after I had had some fairly major surgery, and look, I ate it the whole week. It was wonderful to just not have to worry about dragging my ass out of bed and into the kitchen to whip up some kind of friggin' miracle food while I'm in excruciating pain and can't even stand up straight, right? Because I'm in so much abdominal pain. Not a fun place to be. So it was really beautiful that I had somebody to make me this dish and that I was able to just eat it throughout the week. Wonderful. It's so nice to take somebody's mind off of having to do all of that work on their own when they're not feeling physically or mentally up to it or emotionally up to it. And so I know I appreciated that. I always hear from other friends who have been through similar issues that they really appreciate that. Another thing to offer would be to get groceries. And if you do get groceries and they're okay with that, make sure you work out a good time to come by and let them know, I'm not going to try to visit with you. If you're not up to visit or chat, you don't have to. And if you want, you can just leave your front door unlocked. I'll drop them inside and leave, and I will not be there basically bothering you. Not that they feel in general that your friendship is a bother, right? They don't. But at that point in time, they might not have the wherewithal. They might not have the bandwidth to just be a friend because they're broken. They're broken at this time and they're healing. So just leave them be. Leave the groceries inside. If you can, swing it financially. Pay for the groceries, okay? Then I would suggest it. I would suggest, paying for the groceries. Definitely asking a grieving friend for money doesn't feel good on either side. So if you can swing it, again, You don't have to fill their entire deep freezer in the basement. You can just give them enough, easy bake, easy make, canned, boxed foods, bottled waters, that sort of thing to get by. And then again, bring them something like a main dish, like a casserole or something that they can just heat up on their own, right? This is really important stuff, I think. And it's a really, really, really positive, good way to be there for someone you love. And it is a way to express loving kindness. For those of you who are unfamiliar with that concept, we may get into it later. It's a really beautiful concept that many yogis use. I wouldn't say I'm a yogi, but I practice yoga, and I do see beauty in Buddhism. I'm not religious, but I see beauty in Buddhism. I do. And it's a Buddhist concept, and it extends into Hinduism as well. And essentially, it's a way to live life and a way to approach relationships. And it's a really important way to be when you're able. I'm not saying you're going to be able to approach every situation in life with loving kindness, but when you can, and when it's important, and when you're dealing with a loved one, I think you should try. I do. And so this is a great way to express that. Another good, solid offer of help, and again, setting up an appropriate time. What day am I able to come by? Letting the person know I don't need to visit with you. I'm here to visit with you if you'd like, but I don't need to visit with you. I don't need that. It's up to what you want and what you need, right? So letting the person know, basically you're letting the person know that you're able to be there for them in a concrete way. You don't need anything from them. No need for pleasantries and formalities. No need to visit. You're just going to be there for them. And you can say, hey, is there a day I can come over? I'd like to do your laundry. No, I'm not going to be looking through your stuff. I'm not going to be judging you. Oftentimes people will be concerned that you'll judge the state of their home, which probably won't be stellar when they're not feeling well or grieving. And it's a good thing to let them know up front. I think I'm not going to be looking at that. Certainly not going to be judging that. And with what you're going through right now, I just want to be there to help you. I don't need to visit with you. Let me know when I can come in and throw in a few loads of laundry. Let me know where they are. I'll go at it. I don't even need to bother you, right? I'll get to it and get it done. And again, letting them know that they can leave their door unlocked for you. You're just going to come in and come out. Maybe you can come in and feed their animals, make dinner for their kids, what have you. I promise you, this will be a load off their mind. They will be so thankful for this, and they will remember this forever. Truly. If you want to be an amazing friend or loved one, this is the kind of stuff you need to do. Because offers to listen are great. Offers to talk are okay, but can be a little bit cheap. Like they say, talk is cheap. Action is where the money is. That's not a thing. I just made that up. But action is always better than words. Action is always better than words. So letting that person know that you're there for them. Here's what you're going to do. Here's what time you're going to do it. If they'd like to, they can leave their door open for you. It's not going to be a hassle. You're not going to judge them. You don't need to visit with them, right? So again, groceries, dinner, casserole for the week, cooking something for the kids, taking the kids out for ice cream or a movie. Maybe you've got kids and you can all get together and go out for ice cream or a movie, right? Or to the fun park or whatever. I tend to think movies take your mind off of things when you're grieving. I think sometimes being at the fun park or what have you, it can be nice, but it will also leave you thinking about the people that aren't able to be there with you, right? Or the things you're not able to do. And that can hurt. That can hurt. So I think movies are a good idea. I think sitting and having some comfort food is a good idea. I like that idea quite a bit for kids, for the grieving person, for yourself if you're grieving or hurt or sick. And that's a good idea. And as far as offering people, for yourself, for the person you love, this is just the best way to offer help, right? These are the most constructive ways, I think, to offer help. So letting the person know that you will be there for them in a constructive way, letting them know that you'll come in and, maybe have a cleaning service do their house for them, or that you'll come in and clean their house. This is really going to be a load off their mind. They may or may not be able to express that these things that you're offering are going to help them or are, appreciated or have really helped them to take a load off their mind and have helped them to take items off of their plate. But look, I promise you, they feel it. They know it. They may or may not be able to express it at this time or at all. So don't do it just to be thanked, of course. But they feel it. I guarantee you they feel it. They're thankful. They feel it. They appreciate it. They are thankful. Just please know that, okay? And so I think that's about going to do it for today. Just be mindful when you're dealing with people who are ill, who have lost a loved one, who are potentially, have a limited time on this earth themselves. Just be mindful of how you're approaching the situation, and please check yourself and be mindful of the fact that, you might be doing certain things to make yourself feel better. And is that really helpful versus doing something that will help the person grieving or hurting to feel better? It's an important distinction. Now, let me know in the comments what you have experienced when you've been going through something like this yourself, grief, loss, illness, what other people have done for you that worked, what things you didn't care for so much. Maybe people just left you alone to grieve in silence and weren't there for you at all. Let me know and have a discussion with each other, of course, how that went for you and how you felt and what things you appreciated and what things you didn't appreciate. And let me know what experiences you've had being there for other people as well who are grieving or ill or, potentially about to lose their own life at some point. Maybe they have a limited time left on this earth. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the discussion. Again, apologies for the noises outside. There are a bunch of people who are honking their car horns for absolutely no God-given reason on this earth. We all know that when you unlock a car door, it doesn't need to freaking honk. But these people are rebels, and they just feel that honking is appropriate 24/7. So, apologies for that. I hope that hasn't been a huge disruption throughout the podcast. And thank you for listening in. Please discuss in the comment section, in the chat area, wherever you're listening from, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Spreaker, Facebook, just leave your comments, talk, discuss. I want to hear what you think and what your experiences have been. All right, folks, that'll do it. Have a wonderful night, and just remember that you're not alone. We've got you. And you know what? I know that you're there for the people in your life, too, which is beautiful and amazing, and we need more humans out there like you. Much love. Have a wonderful evening.